Well, look, let's start left to right and do a brief 1-second introduction. And we're going to talk about more about FinTech. We're going to talk about payments. We're going to talk about development in New York and just kind of all sorts of changes going on in the financial landscape. So the floor is yours.
So hi, my name is David Sosna, and from my accent, I'm actually based in Tel Aviv. So I came from pretty far, but the last 2 miles were the most difficult ones today. So I'm with Personetics, and we are a FinTech company. So there are 2 types of FinTech companies, and we are partnering with the banks. We're actually helping them. And what we do, we help them to better engage their customers using analytics. People call these conversational and chatbots, but they are very sophisticated machines that actually has the ability to execute, advise, and be a friend almost of the customer.
Okay, now Maria, who knows me since I'm 22 years old.
Way back. I'm Maria Gotch. I'm president and CEO of the Partnership Fund for New York City. We're actually a nonprofit economic development fund backed by corporate money with a mission to create jobs in New York. And relevant to this audience, we run the FinTech Innovation Lab, which we set up with Michael and some of his colleagues in the financial services sector 7 years ago. And the goal was to make New York City the leading center for FinTech by leveraging the strengths of New York and helping to connect emerging FinTechnology companies to large financial institutions.
And I'm Tarek Bakari. I'm the head of innovation and investment at FIS Global, and we're one of the world's largest financial technology providers to banks. So basically, everything a bank needs to run, we have that. And so if any of you run banks out there, see me afterwards.
Maria, let's start with you. Why now to do this FinTech effort in New York? Why did it start bubbling up across basically the whole venture ecosystem? And is it just the proximity to Wall Street, or are there other reasons why this makes sense for New York?
So, although we started this 7 years ago, the things going on in New York are kind of interesting. There was actually a FinTech boom in New York in the late 90s, right? So there was a whole group of companies. They tended to be in trading platforms and information. If you go back with Creditex, LoanX, Lava Trading, Instanet, Riskmetrics, you actually had a really boom with those companies. Interestingly, many of them ended up getting bought by large financial services. Then the market crashed, the entrepreneurial sector retrenched in New York, and it was as we were coming into sort of 2007-8, after the fiscal crisis, and we looked at why does New York not have FinTech right now in 2008? You had a lot of activity happening on the West Coast, and we actually had a meeting with about 6 CTOs of large financial institutions, and we asked them, where do they look for technology? And every single one of them said, oh, we go to the West Coast, Boston, and sometimes London. So New York wasn't even on the radar screen. So that was a challenge, and we went back to them and we said, if we make it easy for you, and we sort of collect the FinTech that's happening in New York and help, but sort of put you in the role of engaging with them and giving them advice, we can try to build FinTech. And we are the Center for Financial Services, and so with an economic development hat on, these are big taxpayers. They pay for a lot of roads, a lot of services, so it's important that that sector remain strong in paying taxes in New York. And at the same time, you don't want to stick your head in the ground and say, well, we'll just let the innovation happen on the West Coast and we'll be fine. You have to embrace innovation, bring it in, and the idea is you want some of the disruption happening here. It's going to happen, and we as an economy locally want to benefit from that disruption by, having some of the FinTechs come here, disrupt, but also support and cooperate. So I think this term of co-opetition is one that we were trying to support and bring, but making sure that that was happening in New York and not on people flying off to the West Coast all the time.
Tarek, on that point, when Michael talked about build versus buy and being a technology company, and then Maria talking about when she deals with the large financial services companies, she asks them where do they look for technology, and they'd previously said the West Coast. If a firm works with you, and I'll go off of the line that you said, if there's any banks in the room, come talk to you, if they use you to do the services, doesn't it create some risk for them that they are not in-housing this capability?
I think that might have been more the traditional school of thought in the last 3 or 4 years ago, right? I think as we've progressed now to 2017, the school of thought is this disruption is occurring. It has occurred in some cases already, and they're eating around the edges of traditional bank services. But banks still obviously are a very important party because that's where the charter is, that's where that protection and really the legacy relationship is. But now I think when you look at the players of the banks, the big FinTech legacy incumbents, and then the FinTech startups, it's really hard for the first two to really think completely outside the box because people are managing, billion-dollar P&Ls. They can't take a hard left turn at a moment's notice to focus on a new trend or completely pivot off that customer base. So the third person, the party in there, the FinTech startup, they're out there disrupting, they're seeing problems, they're solving them nimbly, and now everyone wants to adopt it, and the consumers are either going straight to the FinTechs if their offer provides that, or the banks are looking to provide it through their channels. So now the first two players there have the opportunity to impart, 5, 6, 7 decades of enterprise-grade experience in cybersecurity, in hardening and making sure uptime, all the things that are necessary that somebody who's got a couple servers in their garage and a great idea maybe can't do, but they provide the other part of that equation, which is a new disruptive way to think about the UX and the needs. So
give me your most popular service or the most popular thing that you're providing right now. And don't explain it to us like we're like a 6-year-old, but maybe like we're like an 11-year-old.
My company personally?
Yeah, like what is the thing that the banks are most frequently coming to you? What's the hottest thing on the shelf right now?
I mean, you could say lending to small businesses. You could say mobile apps to engage, in the front end, a full service banking experience. It could be anything like that.
What about bots that I'm about to ask him about?
Absolutely. Now, if you look at lending and mobile apps as the immediate now future, and you look at blockchain as that's going to be revolutionary, but we have no idea why, I'd put AI and chatbots kind of somewhere closer to the middle where, this natural language capabilities paired with the smarter, more effective machine learning, then employed back into chatbots, brings that experience to the life of that consumer, of that whoever it is out there, and doesn't disrupt it. They can get their problems solved more quickly. I think it's a more real scenario.
So David, okay, here's the thing with the bots, right? I'm on the financial services site. It pops up. It's always a deeply unsatisfying experience, right? Is it?
That's not one of ours.
But is it that it's early and the enthusiasm and the investment is there, but the end product is not ready for prime time, or is it? And I'm just not experiencing yours.
I think that it's got to do with a couple of factors. The first thing that there are two types of bots. There are bots that are more looking at, static content and things that are out there, and instead of searching, you're using a bot. And I think that there are other bots that are more focusing on you. They are looking at your data. They understand who you are. And so when you come to ask them a question, they can either provide you with the answer or they don't have to wait. They can proactively reach out to you and say, hey, did you know that you should actually do this? So I think that the bot as a concept is a little bit misleading. It's not the interface. It's the brain behind it, and it's the ability to create from you conversation powered by the fact that they know who you are. And I think those bots will actually win.
And what's the most powerful or successful use case that your product can do right now? Would you say is it checking balances? Is it resolving a billing issue? Where does it really work now where you feel like it's shining at the moment?
I think that the checking balances or driving and saying how much did I spend are cool, but I don't think they are powerful use cases, frankly. I think, if you look at the Google Alexa commercials, beside the fact that they made all the other devices order pizza and other things, I don't think that they are inspirational. We have an implementation in Europe with one of the largest banks over there, and they're using a chatbot to do the onboarding, the compliance process. When you respond to an ad, suggesting you to buy a high-risk product, like a mutual fund,
Yeah.
you need to go through a process. And there comes a bot that understands a little bit about you, start to ask you questions, and take you through the process from the moment you answer the ad until you buy the product. That's an inspirational process, because without the bot, you have to go through 5 different steps. You have to go through very difficult processes to do that. And a bot allows you really to streamline the process from beginning to end. Another application is saving via bots. And again, in that case,
is what?
is saving money with the bot. Now again, it's not about the bot. You ask the bot how much did I spend. It's the bot reaching out to you
Yes.
and say, hey, this is a weekend. You usually go out with your friends and you spend a lot of cash. Let me grab some money before that.
Right.
So that's an inspiring use case, because the bot is using intelligence to execute.
So Maria, you mentioned, I can't remember if we were standing over there or just now, that FinTech 101 or V1 that you saw in New York was this back-end trading algo type stuff. How excited are you now about this UI and agent and consumer-facing version of it? And how big a part of that is what you're seeing in the stuff that you're doing now?
So it's very interesting. And our program is really driven by what the financial services firms are interested in. And you've seen very much of an evolution. It started very much focused on data and consumer experience. And then I think as decisions were made about their consumer experience, it's now shifted over to mobile. And then there were 3 years where blockchain distributed ledger was very hot. Not so much this year, interestingly, because a lot of bets were made over the last 2 or 3 years. And so I don't want to say the bloom is off the blockchain rose, but there's definitely sort of we've made our bets, made decisions, let's kind of see where those go before we look at new stuff. Yeah. And this year, it's AI, machine learning, to the point where whether fintech companies have AI or not is unclear. What's clear is that they're talking about the fact that they have AI and machine learning.
Well, isn't the bloom off of, so blockchain, for those of you who don't know, is the underlying system that makes Bitcoin move around. Isn't the bloom off of it? Isn't it a big disappointment?
No, I think there is a belief and an understanding that long term, this distributed ledger technology, blockchain, whatever you want to call it, is going to really transform how money is transferred. And smart contracts, a whole series of use cases. The technology is not as robust as it needs to be to handle the trillions of dollars that go through the financial services sector. But there have been some very interesting consortiums, a couple of them, that have come together. They've put big dollars in. They've made their bets. So it's really more that, okay, we looked at the landscape. We picked the ones we're interested in for the first wave of use cases. Mm-hmm. We got to digest that. And I would imagine that you're going to come back out they'll come back out in a couple, I don't know, maybe 2 years for functionality around that. Once the core systems look like they have the robustness needed to not transfer $10 million, but $10 trillion in a day.
Tarek, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I think everybody in the industry, it's the trend is so rampant right now where a new hot topic comes out. Oh, we have to be involved in that. We have to be saying we're doing it. These consortiums pop up. People spend countless amounts of dollars, and no one really has any idea what it can do. We know that Bitcoin is a thing and it works and it's there, but now blockchain is that new hot topic. I think that, in 2017, are we going to see payments revolutionized by blockchain? No, I don't think so. But I think in the very near term, we'll see a few incremental things that everyone will realize the value of this distributed ledger. And I think the first spot that has the most unique potential is within the concept of identity. That unique snowflake of data and information that makes me, me, and you. And having that, right, in some kind of, trusted, indisputable ledger in the world. If you think of some use cases like one, more simply for banks, right? The crushing cost of compliance and regulation. Right now they have to do know your customer, KYC, all of this stuff. Imagine if they were, as trusted partners, able to be all the good guys on one team and share that information, right? So there's one with banks, but imagine consumers, all of us people, not only having all of our data properly secured, but in one place that we are now the owners and stewards of. And we can start not only to have that there, but we can decide it's our own currency, and we can decide how to use it and parse it, because the younger generation is now more comfortable sharing that out there. So I think that's where you'll see with identity and the currency of identity and monetizing it for all kinds of different uses, where we'll start to see the first wave come in. And then I have no idea about the big disruptive wave, but I can imagine a world where the core banking software, the stuff that we sell, right, and everyone uses in banks, that each is their own ledger, right, that runs everything, being a back end, a back office to run the back office accounting and books, but that there's one central one for the world that ultimately changes the way we all think about that. And that's how I think ultimately money movement and things get impacted in the downstream, when it becomes that indisputable ledger of blocks that has all the information in one space. But that's way down the road.
Maria, why did you say that it's not clear that any of these banks have AI?
No, talking FinTech companies.
Okay,
right?
so why did you say
small-
that? So the same thing. Why did you say that it's not clear that any of them have it?
Because it's hot, right? So
Yeah.
you want to come in and you want to get everybody's attention. And right now, financial services firms are paying attention to AI, machine learning, and so this is how you get attention. Is you
How do
say,
you diligence that? I mean,
Right.
you know, it's funny, what I've often said about ad tech is, and I said this even before that whole thing collapsed, maybe someone actually has ad tech technology, there would be no possible way to diligence it. It's virtually impossible to diligence. How do you diligence AI?
Well, I'm not a technology person, so I would go to some very smart technology people, and then I think ultimately you have to test it, and and actually it's less about like, is it AI or is it machine learning? It's, does it fulfill the function that you need, and does it solve the problem that you want solved?
David?
I think that you can start.
Maria would come to you and would say, I'm looking at this platform and I'm trying to diligence it, and how do you know that it's real or not?
Yeah, so first of all, the problem with AI that everyone can say that they have an AI. It's very hard to prove it. So I would do it, it's easy, right? But how do you actually test it? So the first thing that you do a basic, test that you learn in university. You split the population into two, you let them use one side, you actually then run a test on the other, and you see that it works. But the second problem with AI that you have to test that is changing. So one of these problems with the AI system, or the generation one of the AI, that you build a very, very nice model, very accurate, but then it didn't adopt, it didn't change. So I think that the right way to look at AI and test it is to see, first of all, if it's accurate. And there's a big issue around financial services if you put a black box AI that makes mistakes. And then the next thing in terms of testing is to see, does it adopt?
Does it what?
Does it adopt? Does it change? And if it's actually changing and continue to calibrate itself, that to me is real AI.
And what about using, back to the AI and the bots topic a bit more, for the security issues and the security opportunity presented by something like blockchain, do you think there's an equal security and verification opportunity presented with bots? Could we be sort of questioned our way through a security process as opposed to needing to use a password or a second factor with a texted code or something like that?
So I think that it remains to be seen. A lot of these bots that you can now find in Facebook are themselves not secured. It's not encrypted, not yet, not in Facebook at least. So it's kind of a problematic thing to try to do a password reset there where Facebook sees all the communication. But I think that one thing to remember about bots, they don't change the process that they need to go for. And if they do the verification question, they need to ask you things, they're going to keep changing them. They're going to come at it from different places. So they will do a better work than a human being. And you have to count on them. And you can count on them that they will have to go through all the processes to make sure that you qualify from start to end. So I think if you look at risk, if you look at compliance, if you look at the verification, my assumption is that bot will do a better job than the guy that when I call in to transfer money.
And ask your mother's social security number.
Exactly, yeah.